Okay, everyone, we're going to kick off a really unique, really exciting part of the Chesapeake Oyster Science Symposium that we host every year. These are the lightning talks. So these will be rapid fire presentations from emerging scientists, young professionals from all over the world, with a focus on Chesapeake Bay restoration, aquaculture research. We will not, unfortunately, we won't have Q&A for this. It's just a rapid fire, but you can communicate with these with the speakers through their email, which are going to be listed in the chat and which are on all of our agendas and speaker bios. To moderate this, I'm very, very happy to introduce Alexus Stelfox, who is currently interning with us at Chesapeake Oyster Alliance. Alexus is a student at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, majoring in geography and environmental science. She's been absolutely instrumental in helping us put this whole program together. And so I'm very, very happy to welcome up Alexus. Thank you.
Hi, guys. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you guys had a lovely lunch. I know I did. And as Tanner said, my name is Alexus Stelfox. I'm going to be moderating the lightning talk portion of the speaking. And the COA, as we all know, has 102, actually, today 103 partners to complete this coalition, and we wouldn't be able to do it without all of you guys. We have numerous of the people who are a part of our coalition are academic institutions, and the COA places an immense value on research students to help pave the way of the oyster, help pave the way of the Chesapeake Bay. And so here we would like to give the floor to showcase some emerging scientists in oyster and aquaculture views. Oh, sorry, I'm going to fix this mic for you guys. And today we have an amazing lineup of exceptional students from across the Bay, across the country, and across the world. So I would like to start off with from Old Dominion University, Sierra Hildebrant, who is going to be presenting on oyster reef development and oyster-based structures. Sierra, are we online?
Hi, can you hear me?
Is the button? Okay.
Are you able to hear me?
Yep, all good.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Sierra Hildebrant, and I am a current PhD student at Old Dominion University and a Virginia Sea Grant Graduate Research Fellow. And my research focuses on evaluating the functionality of oyster-based living shorelines in Virginia for shoreline stabilization and habitat restoration. And for those of you who may be unfamiliar with living shorelines or maybe living shorelines in Virginia, they are created or restored fringing marshes that provide erosion control through the strategic placement of abiotic materials, so your sand, your rock, your oyster-based products, and then your biotic materials, so your plants. And oysters. And in Virginia, living shoreline approaches are the preferred shoreline management technique. However, their widespread use is limited by gaps in our understanding, and specifically due to the lack of long-term monitoring data available evaluating ecosystem services. So my research aims to address these living shoreline limitations by assessing how successful previously installed oyster castle living shoreline designs address shoreline erosion and create oyster habitat. So in these first two photos, I do have oyster castles pictured, and really oyster castles are just a type of oyster-based concrete product that can be stacked to create a low profile sill along a shoreline. So to assess the success of this living shoreline design, I use two different methods. First is the ground-based data collection, and then the second is remote sensing. And in ground-based data collection, I visit each oyster castle living shoreline site and I collect data that includes reef characteristics, so the length, the width, the area, and then also oyster parameters, so oyster counts and shell heights, and then a handful of other parameters that I either grab on site or I grab using remote sensing. And this data that I collect is then used to evaluate the reef development over time and also elucidate site factors that may affect the project's success. And then moving into my remote sensing method, I use something called the Digital Shoreline Analysis System tool, or DSAS, which was developed by USGS. And I use this to quantify project effect on shoreline erosion by calculating the shoreline change measurements for each living shoreline project. And to do this, to calculate that shoreline change, I hand digitize shorelines in our GIS. using high resolution satellite images from a variety of years, depending on when that living shoreline was installed. And then using that DSAS tool, I'm able to catch transects that calculate an endpoint rate or just the distance between the oldest and newest shoreline divided by a time interval. You can see an example output down in the right corner. From there, I calculate the average rate and then I compare the before and after rates, trying to understand if these living shoreline designs are effective in terms of shoreline stabilization. In total, I have 24 Oyster Castle living shoreline sites that range in age, with my oldest sites being 10 years old. And I have sites located throughout Hampton Roads, so Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Suffolk, with one site in Portsmouth. I unfortunately do not have any results to share with you all today, but if anybody is going to be at the SURF conference in November, I will be sharing my preliminary results and providing more discussion of this study during that time. But today I just wanted to really communicate with you all this research and show how I am combining remote sensing and on-ground data collection to provide a more comprehensive understanding of Oyster Castle living shorelines and their role in shoreline management, as well as oyster habitat restoration. And really just trying to inform future projects and provide stakeholders with science-based guidance to implement successful projects moving forward, and as we see increase in sea level rise. So with that, I thank you all for listening and have provided my email and this slide if you have any questions. Thank you.
That was absolutely amazing. And next we have from the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, from the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, Matthew LaGanke, who's going to be presenting on enhancing bottom-up oyster aquaculture efficiency through farm management and inventory practices. And then Matthew, are you there? And also if you could turn your camera on as well.
Hi, yes, I'm here. The Zoom is not allowing me to turn on my camera.
That's all right. We're just gonna have keep going on the presentation.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, everyone. Today I'll be presenting on a project evaluating the feasibility of RFID technology in off-bottom oyster aquaculture for inventory management. Before I present, I'd first like to thank the Chesapeake Oyster Alliance, the Trust, and the Virginia Fishery Resource Grant Program for funding this project and allowing us to conduct this study. So starting with some background, inventory management is vital to any goods producing business for many reasons, but at a basic level, it's necessary to ensure that supply can meet demand. In the context of oyster aquaculture, some basic inventory information for a farmer includes how many oysters they have, what size they are, where they are, and when was the last time those oysters were processed. Often oyster farmers can have millions of animals growing at a given time, and despite that much product, traditional tools for managing inventory include whiteboards, notebooks, colored zip ties, and quite frequently memory, all of which serve as a farm map. So some businesses also choose to adopt newer inventory management apps that work on phones or tablets, but in an efficiency-seeking business, using a touchscreen in a muddy and wet environment is one thing, but having farmers repetitively take their gloves off simply isn't the most efficient. So RFID, which is radio frequency identification technology, is an inventory management system that's used extensively in managing goods and land-based businesses. It's analogous to the barcode scanning system, which everyone is familiar with, but instead of a barcode scanner that uses a laser to scan a tag with a barcode, this works using radio waves emitted from a reader to scan a metal coil that's glued to a tag. That metal coil takes the place of the barcode and information can be associated to the tag. And in the diagram, the reader and antenna often come in the same package, but I will just refer to that as the reader. So in the context of aquaculture, the major challenges with RFID include waterproofing the metallic tags as they corrode in the presence of water. Second, while radio waves can travel through most materials, they cannot travel well through liquids. But preliminary testing demonstrated that radio waves could travel through fouling organisms on the tag when above the waterline. So getting into my methods, in this study, we bought commercially available RFID hardware from a company that specializes in RFID. named Troven and integrated them into a local commercial oyster farm. Some of Troven's RFID products were developed for use in finfish aquaculture, so they had some waterproof RFID options. Troven did not have a solution for inventory management, so we had to construct an inventory management system by adapting the equipment in a way that we thought might work for the farmer and their operation. So our equipment consisted of a portable waterproof RFID reader with a single red button, as you can see in the top left photo under methods, i.e. it's glove proof. We also had hotel style RFID cards programmed with identifying information, and then 3 models of waterproof RFID tags that were attached to the oyster cages. With just one button on the reader, the farmer could associate all the information they desired to a cage tag using the binder of hotel cards, such as things like size, location, repair needed, etc. The reader stores the information in its memory, including the date and the time of the scan, which can then be downloaded to Excel. And then Troven software included proprietary Excel tab editions, as you can see in the bottom right picture under methods, that were downloaded for data upload and manipulation. So in addition to evaluating the durability of the hardware, I also interviewed the farmers throughout the process to understand the farmer tech dimension. So getting into my results, we deployed the project in September 2022 and have since collected a couple thousand lines of data, with a line representing a single cage full of oysters that was processed through their mechanical sorter. The donut tag proved the best. Not a single one has failed in the environment to read, and it was the easiest for the farmer to attach to the cages. However, while the portable reader turned out to be waterproof, it was not corrosion proof. As you can see, the plates that connect to the data importer console corroded about 8 months into the project. In terms of the learnability and efficiency through the farmer's eyes, they said it was very easy to learn once we saw how to do it. Scanning tags takes little to no time at all. It's definitely made tracking inventory more standard and reliable. And then in terms of effectiveness, they said it's too early to tell the full scale of it, but it's really nice to know what's been sorted when and what still needs to be sorted. And then going to the data management side, I was personally in charge of uploading and manipulating the data in Excel. And the Excel tools from Troven did not make manipulating the data into the desired format very easy. However, it remained possible. So going to my conclusion and discussion, the grower technology interface seemed adequate, which is commonly where technology adoption fails within agriculture. We also found an RFID tag model that stands up to the demands of the environment and the operation. In terms of hardware, the RFID reader worked for the desired purpose, but eventually failed. And then I mentioned the gripes about data manipulation. However, some programming in Excel will likely solve this issue. In terms of expense, it's $3 per tag, $900 per reader, and $300 annually for some software add-ons, which may prohibit smaller farms from investing in the system. There are also some issues with support, as well as long shipping times and expensive shipping costs. However, the farm believes that this system is valuable enough to reinvest in a new RFID reader with some added TLC and a custom waterproof case. So using what we learned from the study, we plan to develop a customizable RFID inventory management prototype as our next steps with collaborators in multiple disciplines in hopes of improving inventory management in oyster and shellfish aquaculture. And with that, I thank you.
Okay, so next on our list, we have from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, Charlye Levine, who's doing presentation on subtitle or oyster reef monitoring using new GoPro technology. And then Charlye, is everything working all right?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Charlye, and I am a first-year freshman at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. It's about 8:45 where I am, but I'm so glad I'm able to join you all today. I will be talking about the Chesapeake Bay Foundation's experience with the subtidal reef monitoring using new GoPro rig technology. And this protocol was developed by NOAA and CERC. And as you all know, subtidal oyster reefs are difficult to monitor outside of using expensive methods like divers and destructive methods like tongs. And so the Chesapeake Bay Foundation trialed this method to see if it would work for them. And for my senior project as a student in the Legal Studies Academy at First Colonial High School, I spearheaded this project and took on a majority of the legwork. So we built the rig based on specs provided by NOAA and CERC, and we were able to begin going out on the boat to collect data in about February of 2023. And so the procedure was that we would begin recording, drop the rig in the water, drive the boat away from the rig, let it sit for about 2 minutes, and then retrieve the rig. And we used ArcGIS technology to randomly pre-select 3 points on each reef. And we did about 5 boat trips over the course of 3 months, monitoring 9 reefs total in the Lynnhaven and Lafayette River. And it sounds pretty simple, but we did face quite a few challenges that we had to overcome over the course of our trial. Weather was a big one, high wind conditions and inclement weather. So we had to reschedule our boat trips multiple times. On our pilot voyage, we did discover that one of our GoPros would not attach to the rig due to it being a different, older model. So as you can see pictured, the rig has, you can have a rig on the side and you can have one that faces outward to the reef, and then you can have a rig on top that faces down. We ended up only having the one on the side because the one that faces down was not compatible with our clamp. And then it took a few tries to figure out how to effectively deploy the rig so that it didn't fall over, and then we would only have footage of the bottom, like just sand. And also sometimes the boat would kick up debris that would obscure the footage. So we discovered that it was most effective to slowly lower the rig off of the back of the boat and then let the boat drift away to avoid disturbing the area. Additionally, another big thing with GoPros is that they don't have the best battery life. And so on our first trip, our GoPro died before we were able to get footage from our last 3 locations. And so on our next trips, we powered off the GoPro in between locations and looked into getting a spare battery, which I would recommend. And so there was also a reef in the Lafayette where the footage was obscured by sea lettuce when we were able to look at it. And so we plan to revisit those reefs in the future, but that's also an obstacle that you could face. We think that having multiple GoPros attached to the rig could help kind of combat that issue. And so once we collected all of the footage we needed, we reviewed the video we got at each point. One of the things we were looking for was engaging footage of sea life. So we had some fun footage of shrimp or fish swim up to the camera, and also taking a clear screenshot that we would then score based on metrics created by NOAA and CERC. And so you can see some of the data we collected on the bottom right. And so the scoring metrics were a 0 if there were no oysters and the bottom was just bare sand or mud. A 1 is if sand or mud with some habitat structure covering less than 50% of the bottom. A 2 was habitat structure covering more than 50% of the bottom. And then a 3 was habitat structure covering more than 50% of the bottom with great height. And so you can also see a breakdown of the data we collected in that pie chart, and another picture of a reef ball we were able to get on one of our trips, which we thought was really cool. The reef balls are definitely thriving. And then also, just to discuss some of our results, we don't feel that these results completely accurately represent our reef status, but rather an amateur understanding of this new monitoring process and the technology that can definitely be improved over time. We definitely learned a lot during this process and think it has great potential for the future and plan on repeating in future years. Hopefully when I'm back on the East Coast this winter, I'll be able to get back out on the boat. But using this technology, CBF will be able to quantify reefs that are over 20 years old for the first time and make sure that they're meeting the metrics of successful oyster restoration, which is super exciting. And some other secondary benefits of this include promotional videos using that fun footage of biodiversity, and things like that. And another thing that came out of this was a methods document that I made, which is a user-friendly document that details our experiment and procedure. So other nonprofits interested in using this technology can definitely reach out, and that can be emailed to you. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, next on our list, we have Mohammed Suleyman from Morgan State University in Pearl, presenting on modeling impacts of habitat change on commercial fisheries in Virginia's Middle Peninsula. And then, Mohammed, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Can you hear me? So, sorry, this slide. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Mohammed Suleyman, and today I will be touching on our ongoing modeling project in the Virginia Middle Peninsula, where in partnership with NOAA, the FAL is exploring the ecological and economic impacts of oyster restoration and seagrass habitat change in two Chesapeake Bay tributaries. So figure 1 on the top left panel shows the Virginia Middle Peninsula region, while the long and the short dashed black cycles highlight the York and the Patuxent rivers, respectively. Both river systems had oyster restoration completed, while eelgrass populations continue to decline in both systems. There are also commercial fisheries in operation in these systems as well. As these two important living habitats change, commercial fisheries associated with them could also change. So to understand this change, we developed two ecosystem models using EcoPath with ecosystem modeling software. Models were mass balanced, ensuring that there is enough food in the system to sustain all interactions. We then simulated the models forward in time for 20 years. Our models had 11 scenarios reflecting the change in our systems. We had 3 scenarios that described changes to oyster reef populations. One scenario simulated a mature reef in our system with an increased reef growth of 4.7% annually. And this was informed by post-restoration monitoring efforts in all the restored rivers. We also had a scenario of a newly restored reef where oyster populations stayed at their post-restoration state with no growth. Finally, we simulated how this system would respond if there were no reef restoration. We then simulated eelgrass population change as well, showing restored eelgrass, current eelgrass, and declining eelgrass population trends. The restored eelgrass scenario in our systems was simulated to increase to the management goal. Now, I want to mention here that the management goal in both systems were large and were set based on maximum observable SAB coverage in these systems. Eelgrass and weed-gen grass coexist in our systems, and it is established that weed-gen grass is encroaching into space vacated by eelgrass. So our eelgrass scenarios were also customized to reflect this reality. And so when eelgrass decreased in a scenario, weed-gen grass increased and vice versa. Since oyster reef grow in aggregation, creating space for encrusting and also filter feeding organisms, we simulated the biomasses of oyster of habitat-associated species to increase. So organisms such as sea anemone, hook mussel, tunicates, barnacles were also supposed to increase in our mature reef scenario and decrease in the no reef scenario. Similarly, organisms known to associate with eelgrass beds were supposed to increase in our restored eelgrass scenario and decrease in the declining eelgrass scenario. For our results, I'm going to touch on changes in annual dockside cells in both river systems. So shown in figure 3 on the y-axis is the total dockside cells for 3 oyster scenarios. The brighter yellow line will represent a mature reef scenario, the pink line will represent a newly restored reef, and the maroon line will represent a scenario with no reef restoration. Note that while total dockside cells for both plots are in millions, they are not in the same scale. So 0.4 equals $400,000 in total dockside cells for the Patuxent River. Also note the York River dockside cells are an order of magnitude higher. The main result here that I want you to note is that increased oysters means more dockside cells, while decreased oysters translates to less dockside cells in both systems. In figure 4, the combined effect of 2 habitat changes on the annual dockside cells is shown. The main what habitats mean increased total dockside cells and less of
Are you still presenting? I was getting a little glitchy. It might have been the service. Yeah. Well, okay, let's give it up for Muhammad, everyone.
Can you hear me?
Okay,
Hello?
then fine. Oh, there we go. Sorry. We couldn't hear you for about a minute, but
Okay, so do I need to repeat myself somewhere? Sorry.
we were on figure 4 for the last thing that you were talking about.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. I lose my connection a little bit. I'm sorry. Yeah, so in figure 4, what I was trying to convey in figure 4 is that I'm showing in figure 4 shows the two habitat changes on the combined effect of two habitat changes on the animal dockside cells. And the main result is that more both habitats mean increased dockside cells, and less of both habitats means decreased dockside cells, total dockside in both figures. And also we note that the York River is 3 to 4 times greater in total dockside cells than the LaGanke. So overall, the models suggest that oyster restoration has a positive effect on these systems. Eelgrass restoration will result in a synergistic positive effects as well. Thank you.
And then our last panelist for the day is going to be Alan Williams from the UMD UMCES Horn Point Lab. And he is presenting in person.
I'll try not to glitch out. Hi, everybody. My name's Alan. I'm a local student here at the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Sciences Horn Point Laboratory. I'm a PhD student on my 3rd year. My project is part of a much larger group project called the Smart Sustainable Shellfish Aquaculture Management Framework, which Don will talk more about later today. As part of that project is a huge conglomerate full of different engineers and different scientists all working together to create this underwater robot that's going to go into on-bottom oyster leases and provide farmer with a whole bunch of details about the oysters within the lease, including live dead counts, size measurements, and of course a oyster density map, which we're trying to get through sonar imagery and also visual data from the drone's camera and stuff like that. Sorry, excuse me. But the oyster density map is going to be used to inform farmers of how they should be dredging their oyster leases in order to increase yield, reduce work time, and reduce the environmental impact, which gets into my specific aspect of the project, where I am monitoring the sediment plume creation from traditional dredging methods and those created with the use of the remote operated vehicle underwater. The idea is that the remote operated vehicle will have that reduced impact in comparison to the traditional dredge. We don't know that yet. I'm trying to measure that so that we can prove that sustainability measurement. Anyway, in order to do that, I have a variety of different sensors that you can see here on the right side. Depicted here is a blue ROV representing our SAM robot that's going down and creating its oyster density map within a lease. Around that impact site, I have an array of different sensors. We have light loggers, which are those like green squares, and in situ water quality sensors to indicate and characterize the plume and its concentration and how it's affecting oysters within that lease and how it may affect animals within the surrounding habitat. I also have around it is a Aquatic acoustic current profiler, which will validate that data and say, okay, the waves moved this way. The buoy said there's a current, like a plume here. So it's all validating each other. After that impact is performed on a boat, we will have this echo sounder on the far right here doing transects following the sediment plume, because we may be able to indicate where the plume is by the surface, but we need to be able to tell the concentration and intensity of that plume at specific depths using that backscatter intensity data. And we are also using, for a much larger surface area measurement, is aerial drone imagery. So we got drones on drones on drones over here. And that using infrared imagery, we can sell by that image right there. I walked in, that's preliminary data. I walked in the HPL Cove because we have available sites like that. But we can see that when I walked in that area, immediately after we could see the sediment plume. And using the infrared imagery, we get very intense contrast between the newly kicked up sediment and the sediment that's average within the water column on the surface. So with all those equipments combined, hopefully we can tell the difference between traditional dredge sediment plumes and the ROVs created sediment plumes. I didn't put a whole lot of information on here, which I should have. That's because I was in Mexico last week, so apologies. But you'll see a lot more of that information when Don presents. But if you want to hear from me, you can contact me at awilliams@umcs.edu or find me at Al the Scientist everywhere. Have a good one, guys.
Let's give it up one more time for all of our panelists today. Amazing work that everyone's been doing. So that concludes the lightning talk portion, but I'm going to hand it off to Tanner for the rest of